Hi, Paul Arnold here, sometimes known as Stuttering Professor, which become very clear. And today I want to talk to you about feeding back and the importance not only to feeding back to your members of your team, but also to the people who are really important to you, be it your mum, your dad, your brother, your sister, your loved ones. Because a lot of relationships are fundamentally built on the principle of honesty. And when honesty leaves a relationship, that relationship starts to fall down. And we need to have that as much in our private life as we do within our business life. So why is it really important? I think because ultimately it's about holding to high standards. And particularly in the business world, we must set very clear expectations and make sure that we are delivering against that consistently all the way through. And when people start to drop down, we need to make sure that we lift them up. And the most important thing is to lift them up a little bit immediately rather than waiting for a long period of time it drops down. It's so much more difficult to maintain high standards if you allow things to keep dropping incrementally as we go down. Look, there are three ways that we learn. We learn through modeling. We model those people around us. And we learn through trial and error. When we fall down, we get back up, fall down, get back up. And we also learn from feedback. So it's one of the critical three ways which we learn. So why don't people feedback? Look, it's a lot to do with that old one that we've covered time and time again, fear. And we fear breaking the relationship with another person if we say that to that person. But when we look at that, we've really got to ask ourselves, do we want to be respected or do we want to just be liked? And I actually think that the two actually often work together. Is only by being respected and saying the truth do you actually get to a level of deep likeness. And the other thing is about, we don't know how we're going to deal with the emotions that comes out of that stuff. And trust me, if you're strong enough, you can deal with that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. And obviously the key thing about feedback was, oh my God, my boss wants to give me feedback, it's going to be negative. We have got to learn that the primary way that we learn and we grow is through people giving positive feedback. You think about the kid on the potty. What you do is you reward the young child when they're getting close to the potty or when they sit on the potty, rather than reprimanding them when they are off the potty. So actually it's the same with us. We're just still big kids, and we've got to keep reminding ourselves that actually positive reward is the more powerful way to get people to do things. So when someone is not doing something right in a presentation, don't reprimand them for the things they're not doing right. Compliment them on the things they get starting doing right. And even if it's not perfect, you're nudging them towards where you want them to go. And I think, we've got to reframe feedback as being a gift for growth. Every one of us can think of a past time in our lives when we've been given a bit of feedback, which at the time stung maybe, but at the end of the day really called us to action and made us change our ways. So think of feeding back to someone as a gift of growth. And that's a critical thing about where we come from when we give that feedback from. Now I want to share with you my feedback loop, and this goes beyond the typical sort of feedback sandwich we talk about, because I want to bring a very important element in. The very first thing you say is, when you're feeding back to the person, is this is what I saw, this is what I heard. Irrefutable facts. So you make a note of some things that you saw or you heard that no one can disagree with. That happened, okay? There's the evidence, clear. Then what you then do is you back it up, and this made me think. This made me think that you hadn't put enough preparation in or whatever. And this made me feel, and this is the critical element, you bring feeling into this, particularly into the workplace, because this is the bit that really you get leverage on. This made me feel that you didn't care too much about it, and that made me feel disappointed. And that's the bit that makes me say, oh God. And then you pause, stop, pause, and you invite them to come in. For all you know, they may have a major problem at home. Their mother was rushed to hospital. They spent all night by her bedside. And frankly, they just literally came in and they didn't have time. You must give the person time to respond. Now, Obviously, there may be some sort of excuses put in there, and you can see through that. And then you say, this is what I'd like to see. This is what I'd like to hear. And if you did that, that would make me think X, and that would make me feel Y. And then the next critical stage is, how can I support you in delivering that? You can't give this stuff to someone without saying, let me help you. That's got to be the critical stage. Now, some very specific techniques on feeding back. Some of these you often know. You've got to choose the right time and place to do this. So actually, you often got to say something like, is this a good time? Let's find a quiet place, because we've always got to feedback, a lot of this stuff, in a private place. And you've got to come from a place of positive intent. You've got to come from a place where you are feeding back from a place of actually wanting to help them to grow, rather than a place of anger and frustration because they did something in that meeting. And it's got to be as close as possible to the time that actually happened, because then it's fresh in everyone's mind. People can think, why was that? How could I do it better? Rather than waiting 12 months. 12 months is the lousiest way to give feedback. And actually, I would actually support doing feedback in the moment rather than much later on. And one of the critical things we learn from NLP is feedback at what we call a behaviour level, not an identity level. Because why we're feeding back? Because we want to change behaviours. So if you say, I noticed you did that, or that was not quite right, that's a more powerful place to say, you know what, you're just stupid. What can someone do when you attack them at an identity level? You've got to deliver it at a level of, I didn't think you did enough preparation. I didn't think you did enough analysis. Would be a much better place to do. So keep it at behavior level, because A, it stings less, and B, you're more likely to actually get some results coming out of it. Then as such, what you then got to do is actually, you've got to stand behind your convictions. When you're feeding back, it's very easy to, from the pressure and things like, to actually, they get a bit upset and things like that. Oh, well, no, I didn't quite mean it like that. No, you've got to keep the end in mind, as Stephen Covey says, and stand behind it. You say, look, I appreciate that hurts a bit, and I appreciate this, but actually, you've got to actually make sure that you are, standing behind this stuff and pushing them because you want to get that change for them as much as for you. And don't forget, you've got to not get hooked, to use that TA terms, within the emotions. Emotions are deeply contagious, and if they kick off, you're likely to be kicking you off, and they're likely to chuck stuff at you. And actually what you want to really do is actually keep clean of all that stuff and not allow that stuff to actually drag you in, because words wound. There's the old-fashioned phrase about, we recall negatives 5 times more powerfully than we recall positive. You all had it, you had a positive review at work, you go home and you see your other half and say, well, how did it go? So, oh, he didn't like me on that one particular one. And you ignore all the good things they said. So again, make sure we give lots of positives as well, rather than it just being a negative space. And we've got to manage the meaning. If we're trying to actually manage emotions, as you see with my past model, we have some event that triggers us. And that we must look at what is the meaning we put upon that event, because that meaning then affects our emotions, and from our emotions it then affects our actions, and from our actions it then affects our results. So actually we've always got to try to explain things. And I always talk about the double whammy. You can say, look, this is what I mean when I give you that. I mean this, but I don't mean that. So be very clear when you're giving feedback, the underlying meaning you're putting upon this, because otherwise they will jump to another space based on their past experience and history, which will be less positive than what you're trying to go and say. And often, the way to do it is just use words, even better if. Even better if is a very nice way of suggesting people that it's not bad what you did, but even better if you could do that, you'd be even more powerful. And then the last thing which I really want to encourage you to go and do is to feed forward. So it's this idea that sometimes, going back is a bit more difficult. If you say, look, this next presentation let's talk about ways we can make sure that you are absolutely excelling and flying in that future presentation. What do you think you could do? What do you think is some of the things that would really help? So, well, I get a bit nervous, and you help support them all the way through that. So anyway, I hope that's a useful quick bite into the field of feedback. I obviously run workshops all about this, and happy to come into your organisation and help if there's any way I can. Information at the end of this video. Anyway, take care and have a good day.